we are live with our inaugural live streaming of the ISSA SoCal chapter interviews with leaders. I will say this is probably a very proud moment for me, not only to kick this off, but because of the efforts that we put in to start the chapter. So many great people to thank. As we were doing our planning, we said, how do we kick off one of the most critical virtual conversations that should ignite the chapter? And we said, well, we all know people. I got a friend. I got this, right? And then we said, well, let's create a theme as to why we're doing some of these things. And it came up, oh, it's Black History Month. And then it came up, oh, it's Women's Month, and it's Asian Month, and it's Hispanic. And we're like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's roll with it. Then, immediately, I start texting a few folks. I didn't expect responses. It was a Saturday where we were meeting. I didn't expect answers. Well, I got whiplash when I got the responses back. When is it? Yes. So I want to introduce our first two guests to kick off the SoCal chapter efforts. You may or may not know them from the industry. If you're on this thing, you already know. But we have Miss Jamaica and Mr. Larry. And I will say, I couldn't be prouder to have both of you, because every conversation that we have, which is usually separate, it's one-on-one, blows up into a great experience. This is going to be dangerous. I'm just going to say, okay, right off the bat, this is going to be dangerous. So let's behave, okay? Because
I'll do my best.
Too much, but the efforts of what I want to make sure that we do is that we show up and give everybody the nuggets of the stuff. I'm going to try not to curse too much, but y'all know it's going to be a whole hot mess. The stuff that you've learned that others, it doesn't have to take them 5, 10, 20 years to figure out, right? I was just on a call with the Sim Women's Network. Is incredible. And I mean, they were just dropping things on what you should be doing in the rooms that you're in with the people you're in. It was all about networking. So to me, I was like, yes. So I'm just going to introduce you very quickly and just give us a little bit, give us that 10-second pitch of what you do. Ms. Jamaica, why don't you just kick us off?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mel. I am Jamaica Aaron. I am the Chief Information Security Officer at Headspace, and I'm responsible for security, governance, compliance, all the standard stuff. But I also have IT and cloud. And right now, we're really, really focused on how we can help enable AI in the mental health space. So that's a big part of what I'm doing every single day, making sure that mental health is accessible to everyone, everywhere, because we need it right now. And so that's the work that I'm doing, and it's my head work meeting my heart work once again. So I'm super excited to be sharing my time and space with Headspace right now.
All right. So before we jump into Larry, I got to give the backdrop, Jamaica. All right. So I get invited by our great industry friend, Chris Rides. He's like, Mel, I need a speaker for this panel in Vegas. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be there. Yeah, sure.
It was a panel that Larry was supposed to be on, but he had a hurricane.
Yes. Ma'am, I didn't want to bring it up, but sure, just saying, I was runner-up to Larry. That's all I'm just saying, okay? But which I get. So here's the deal. So I hadn't really driven to Vegas from California, so I said, you know what? I'm gonna drive. But given the schedule, I just threw a bunch of things in a bag. I'm like, I'm going to be there a day or two. Made it in record time. Showed up to the conference in record time. And guess what I didn't have, because I was a last minute ringer? I didn't have any prep time. So I'm like, wait, who am I on with?
Who preps?
They have a raised, sir, they have a raised stage. I'm They have a raised stage.
Right.
And I'm sitting there. Trying to figure out what I need to do, right? And I meet Jamaica 5 minutes before we go on stage. And I'm like, wait, where do you work? And I'm like, oh, damn. I'm like, oh, crap. I'm like, this is going to get ugly. So we get on stage. I realized when I packed quickly, I forgot to pack socks. So I'm dressed down a little bit. I'm wearing like pleated dress pants, and I'm showing up like I belonged on the island. I was like dress shoes with no socks, right? But it's a raised stage, so I'm a little OCD, so I'm getting triggered by everybody staring at my fairly hairless legs.
I thought you were making a statement. Now it makes sense. Those videos. Got it. Okay.
We'll get better. Jamaica does her intro, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, wow. So then Chris says, Mel, why don't you introduce yourself? And I looked up. She's literally about 3 inches, 4 inches away from me. Like, I applied for the job that you have right now.
He told me that on the stage.
On stage. I'm like, right? And it's a beautiful role in a great company doing great things. So to me, yes, own that all day.
That was the first time. And you were not the only person that day that told me that they applied for that job, the job at Headspace. And so when I started to show up places, people were going, oh, so it's you. You got the job. That's the first time that's ever happened to me before. But it was wonderful because every single person that told me that they applied were phenomenal in our industry. And it gives me, I am proud to be amongst so many consummate professionals that I respect and know that we were competing against one another. I mean, one of us is going to win out in every role that we all apply for. But I think when you know the competition and you realize like, hey, I am amongst some of the best in the business, it was honestly, truly, even though I was a little embarrassed, I also was really like, well, I think I actually have some chops here, because you do wonder, right? You do wonder like where everyone thinks that they're good. But I think to know where you fall amongst your peers, and I think it's not just all peers, but peers that and you respect and know have the chops. I think it was a wonderful surprise to have you and so many others say to me, I wanted that job. And you got it. But also you added that you were really happy that I was the one that got the job. So that was the end of what you said to me. So I appreciate
So here's something I want to jump in on that, right? So in those moments, right? So yeah, it's a little bit of a pop the collar moment. And it's also a moment to reflect on, I wonder what it was that I demonstrated in that pushed me over the others, right? Yeah. Going back and thinking through what the process was, thinking through what you said, thinking through how you demonstrated your experience, your aptitude, and all those things. And maybe it was the story you told, maybe it was the strategy you presented of your idea of how you would, build it out. But it's in those opportunities, it's so great to be able to not just understand how you sit and how you feel, but then it's also good to reflect on, let me go back and dig into that, because let's be very clear and very honest. You're there today. The clock is ticking, right? Like at the end of the day.
You're right. I'm at a year mark already. The time goes by so quickly, and before you know it, someone else will call you, right? Because they call us under the cover of night. Some other company will call you, some headhunter or recruiter will call you. And I'll tell you, I think that for me in that time, I was transitioning, and I spent some time getting my mental health together, getting my mind right. And I wasn't looking for a job. But so many people saw the post from who's now my boss, the CTO at Headspace, Ritwick, and they sent it to me personally and said, we think that you'd be great at this company, and it's SoCal based and all these things. And I applied through LinkedIn. It's so bad. Like, I know we have all these ways that we do things, right? And I love a good headhunter. Don't get me wrong. I do. But I applied through LinkedIn, and then I went on vacation. And the executive recruiter who's still with us, Lindsay, she said, I had you on my list to source, but wasn't sure. And then I saw this application come through via LinkedIn. And so I'll say this, like, this is the second job that I've applied for in LinkedIn and gotten. Headspace, I also applied for Nike, for my director job at Nike through LinkedIn, and got that job as well, and ended up relocating my family to Portland. And so people say that it doesn't work. It works. I think how you engage on LinkedIn matters so much, because when you look at my LinkedIn, it really does tell a really great story about my personality, what I stand for, the work that I've done. It's a really great overview, and it's a public overview. So if I'm lying, people can just say that didn't happen. And so keep your LinkedIn up to date and engage with people on it.
I'll agree
Because,
with that.
All right.
you know,
All right, let me just jump in here because I was laughing and I was looking at something. I go, ma'am, where do you work again?
Headspace.
Oh. So what does your headline say on the video?
Headspace. It says headspace.
It says head pace.
And
Ma'am,
I mean,
didn't
I'm
need
good at a
you.
lot of things. Spelling isn't one of them. So, you win some, you lose some. You're typing.
I figured you were
trying to
so
get in.
excited about this
I mean,
conversation.
how do I even fix that? Like, how do you even?
The triple dots and edit your headline right over your
You
thing.
know,
That's
I
so
mean,
funny.
How do you even
All
fix
right.
it?
That was one of the best intros because I opened it by kind of embarrassing her, and then I closed it by kind of embarrassing her.
And you
You're
did that the
welcome.
last time
That's
you saw
what
me
you
a few
get.
weeks ago. You know what?
I'm just-
He saw me a few weeks ago. He saw me a few weeks ago, and he did it again, but he was wrong this time. He swore that I don't answer his text messages.
Oh
And
my God. Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
no, I did. He's like, no, he harped for like 30 minutes about people not answering
That
his
was not
messages.
30 minutes.
And I was like, go check your cell phone because
It probably was 30 minutes.
He-
This
no,
is
it
Mel
wasn't.
we're
It was
talking
3.
about.
It was literally 3,
And
man.
she
Because then I
said,
checked my
he's like
messages
this
and I'm like,
tall.
oh shit,
So
she's right.
he's
No,
like this
hold
tall,
on.
so he's
Point of
standing right in
correction.
your face.
No. Point of correction. She said, I talked to you in January. And I'm like, ma'am, I would have remembered talking to you. It would have been sassy. And it would have been this. It would have been that. We texted
That's the same thing.
in
I
January.
talked
Same.
No.
I
So,
communicated.
Yes,
and it was
we
3 minutes,
communicated
not
in
half hour.
January.
Listen,
He swore
Jamaica,
he
I'm
hadn't
just
talked to
saying,
me since September.
I don't have any bad feelings towards the fact that you're in Headspace at all. The fact that I was using the app before I applied, and then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop using this app. I don't know if I trust the security. I'm kidding. Right. So anyway, all right, that was a beautiful intro. Larry, you need to bring it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, listen,
'cause-
that's a tough act to follow, right? I am, for me, I'm not Jamaica, right? I'm not in a unicorn company and doing amazing things and this wonderful, inspirational person. I'm a guy trying to help, right? At the end of the day, right? I'm a faith-based guy who is building a company called Confide, who after being a CISO 8 times, being in this industry for 33 years, I realized that something is broken, and that is the selling and buying process of technology and services. And so I'm building Confide for the sole purpose of cutting down the noise for cyber executives. At the end of the day, right? Every cyber executive is literally drinking from a fire hose with all of the tech and services companies that are, just spraying at them all their sales and messaging and everything. Whether you go to any conference, all the words are the same and everything. And so Confide is here really to be an advisor to cyber executives to help them cut through the noise and really just solve problems, right? At the end of the day, we're trying to minimize the effort and the time that executives have to go out to try and find ways to solve problems, and we're here to help do it. And because I've
All
been
right,
in the
Larry,
industry for 33
I gotta
years.
stop you here. Thank you for that
Hey.
infomercial. But
Hey, listen, it is what it
talk
is.
about you.
Listen,
by the way,
here's the deal.
Jason, I'll be sending you the invoice. We're not spotting. No, I'm kidding. I'm
No, listen,
because
here's the
you
deal,
are talking
bro.
about a real problem. Yeah.
The thing is this. Is if you go look at my LinkedIn, I am who I am. And for me, everything I've always done has been about helping this community. I've always been open to taking calls, taking emails, taking texts from anybody who needs help, right? And at the end of the day, I realize, yes, I'm giving guidance and I'm helping people in their careers. But at the end of the day, where the industry needs help is because we've got one side of the market that is literally pushing and driving so much into our ecosystems and into our companies that we're trying to protect. And it's hard. So for CISOs who are coming in, for executives, for practitioners who are coming in, it is so hard to decipher what's real and what's Memorex. If you're a certain age, you sort of get that, right? But it is, I realized when I left my last CISO role, I really hit this pivotal moment of like, I love being a CISO because I love leadership. I love leading people. I love growing people, right? And for my companies, I love being able to protect and govern and guide the other executives in the company. But at the end of the day, I think God built me on purpose for a purpose. And my purpose has always been to help somehow in some way and give back, right? And the more I prayed about it, the more I thought about it, the more I like had conversation with my peers about it. The thing I do best is help people. And so how could I do that the best is that's why I built what I built. And that's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing.
Woof. I want to ask you about one thing. What started you on your walking videos? I can't remember what you call them.
Yeah. My food for
What
thoughts.
start? Food for thoughts. Thank you. Sorry. Walk me through the first time you were like, I need to do this.
Yeah. So here's what happened, and it's interesting because I just recorded another one today because I hadn't recorded one in 2025. And here's the reality of what's happened. It started because my mind is always moving. Like there is always something in my mind that I'm questioning and I'm wondering and I'm pondering about. And what used to happen was I would then go research based on what I'm thinking about. Or I would start texting people individually. Hey, like this is on my mind. What, like, how do you handle this? Hey, how do you, what is, and one day I was like, why am I going to individuals or small groups? Why don't I just go out to the community? I'm a community guy. I love the community of cyber practitioners. I love the people I'm connected with. Why don't I just go out to the community and start asking these questions and start putting this stuff out in the ecosphere? And that is what started it. And it actually got a whole lot of response, right? A lot of people started really diving into the things that were just in my brain. And I used to, when I would have all these things, I would push them down. I'd be like, listen, I got so much work going on. I don't need to be focusing on this thing over here, right? I don't need this. I don't have time for that. But then I would go into researching like, oh man, this is perplexing. Let me go in and research and let me dive into this and let me try and figure this out. And let me understand and let me do some research on who's doing what. And then I would start pinging individual people. And then finally I was like, why don't I just ask people, just throw this out there? And it was really an experiment. It was an experiment of let me put this out there, see if this resonates and see if people start giving me feedback. And literally people started not just responding to the videos directly, but people started responding to me privately. Right. I would get texts from people. I would get LinkedIn direct messages from people as a response to the video. Right. And so that was a big piece of it. And, as both of you know me well enough, I am a guy who wears everything on his sleeve, right? Like I'm an open book about everything as it relates to both my life and how I feel and the work that I do. And so it's actually been one of the most positive and rewarding things that I've done is starting that food for thought. And when I realized that I hadn't done one in 2025 yet because I've just been so heads down on stuff, I'm like, okay, like I'm doing myself a disservice by not putting
You're doing us
all
a
of these
disservice,
things.
damn you. Your followers need your message. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
That's
I
why I
got you, bro.
asked. I had to scroll
I
all the way
got you.
back. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, where is he? He needs to show up
I
and show
got you.
out.
I
Speaking of
got you.
showing out,
One will be coming out.
so thank you. So speaking of showing out, if anybody's on and they've seen me for the last couple of years, the way I show up and show out to events, this is one of my inspirations right here. Man knows how to freaking dress, and he dresses sharply. The shoes, the pocket square. So I'm like, okay, all right, I see you. I see you. So if
Thank
anybody
you,
wants
sir.
a guide and you don't want to go as audacious and obnoxious as me, just follow Larry. All right. With that said, I actually want to listen. It's Black History Month. Why is it only 1 month? We'll talk about that shit later. Why is Hispanic Month only 1 month? Why is cybersecurity only 1 month? Women's, Asian, right? That's cute, right? Every day we're living with a ton of shit. I won't even get into the politics or anything else, but it's just every day, right? if you are not part of a certain segment or otherwise, you're getting impacted. You're getting impacted without you even knowing it. You've got people that are getting impacted. And I actually want to bring up a topic because it is from an executive leadership learning standpoint. And Ms. Jamaica, you reminded me of it when I was going through your incredible photos that you've been posting and the celebrations and the unity and all these other pieces. And I said to myself, I'm going to drop this little bomb because this is how we're going to bring it today. I'm going to drop this little bomb, and I am going to introduce a couple of tough questions and a couple of tough topics.
Okay.
And I realized, I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool, and I get it. And then I stopped because I remembered a story, which I'll share after I ask you this question. I'm like, I guarantee you people have no clue unless you've been purposeful about learning or in those spaces. Now I'm going to drop the bomb on you, ma'am. You had an incredible picture of celebrating, a couple pictures, and I noticed you had a diamond pin on your jacket or your shirt, and it said 1908.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was like, oh, that's deep. That's beautiful. I'm like, oh my God, I get it. Then that's when I paused and I was like, I guarantee you a ton of people have no clue what that means. Walk us through that, ma'am.
Yeah, so you saw my sorority pin. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and we were established in 1908 on the campus of Howard University. And it is, I think given the time and the space that we are in right now, our historic D9 organizations are going to play a critical role in moving our country forward, but specifically in moving the African American, the Black community forward. And so, oftentimes we try to separate church and state. We try to separate work and our other organizations. But I think that right now it is showing us that it is a time to be tremendously proud of these historic Black organizations that we are a part of. And Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated isn't the only organization that I'm a member of. I've been a member of the National Urban League, a historic organization, the National Society of Black Engineers, celebrating its 50th. I've been a member of many organizations that have fought for civil rights, for equal access, for equitable healthcare, for all of these different tenets. Right now, I'm focused on empowering our families and mental health and seniors and all of these things, these organizations that help push our communities forward. Now, more than ever, it is our time to stop hiding, I think, in the shadows with these organizations that we're a part of that are powerful and that are really moving the needle in our communities. And they don't just impact the Black community. Our historic organizations, especially those focused on civil rights, the trickle-down effect impacts every community of color in the United States of America. And so I think it's really, really important that we allow those organizations and the work that they've been doing for over 100 years to shine. So yes, now you see oftentimes when I come on LinkedIn, if I'm wearing a pin. I happen to be at a Black History luncheon last week, the Future Leader luncheon here in Orange County from the OC Chamber, and I was wearing my Alpha Kappa Alpha pin, and so that's what you saw. But you also saw it on LinkedIn, which you very rarely see me on LinkedIn in my sorority attire, or because I've always thought that it was something that I needed to keep separate, and I think that right now is the time to really let the world know who we are as people, because we're already being attacked. And I think if you're already being attacked, you might as well be who you really are, because it doesn't change the nature of the attacks, right? Whether I am a woman of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority or not, I am still a Black woman. I am still a woman of color. And so the things that are targeted at me, I have to be able to resist. I have to be able to fight back. And we can't do that by hiding. And I understand there's a way to do it. And I'm trying to help show people this is how we show people who we truly are.
I love all of that. Let me just add something.
Hold on, Larry. Hold on. Let me just because I gotta give you this one piece. Here's the thing: 1908 is also some of the most toxic and pivotal points in Black history.
Absolutely.
Yep.
The most toxic. So for AKA to be founded at Howard, and for all of these pieces, and then what happens in 1909, right? that's one of the most critical 2 years defining everything that we're doing today to recognize, understand, and help Black people. I'm just saying, man.
So understand, Howard University is a staple in the community. So, my sister is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, number one. Number two, my grandmother was the president of the state of Texas chapter for Alpha Kappa Alpha. And then I am a member of Phi Beta Sigma, right? So we were established in 1914 at Howard University, right? So understand the importance of Howard University as not just an institution of higher learning, but also as an institution driving Black power, ingenuity, innovation, and a number of other things. I have a son now who, if he gets a certain number on the bar, he's planning to go to Howard Law School. Howard is a central component to a lot of Black excellence in this country. Let's just be very, very transparent on that.
I love this, and this is why I also wanted to bring it up, because I knew about AKA, and I also knew about the events in 1909 and 1909. So to me, let's bring it, right? Because a lot of people don't know. Okay, either one of you, what was founded in 1909?
You're going to tell us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
NAACP.
I'm a member of the NAACP too.
I'm just saying, right? Because
I don't know every founding date.
Exactly.
I don't know every.
Just saying.
I don't know every founding. No, I don't know every founding date of every historical section.
Neither do I.
But
I just happen to know that one.
I'll make sure that I have a list on my.
Right.
I just happen to have that one on my in the back of my brain. So Larry, I'm going to actually pop you one because I want to see how good you are. Because now, after you share your story on this one, I'll share mine. What has your experience been in the last 5 to 10 years, very specifically targeting 5 years, with the recognition of things like Juneteenth?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I am born and raised in Texas. Let me put that out there. So Juneteenth was something that I grew up with from this age, right? It was a part of my every year. When I moved east, to recognize that Juneteenth wasn't a thing and nobody understood or knew what Juneteenth was absolutely disheartening and weird for me, because growing up in Texas, it was a part of everything. As a minority in Texas, everybody knew there was all the barbecues, all the things happened for Juneteenth. We had festivals all over the place. So when I left college and moved east, and every place I stayed, Alabama, North Carolina, Northern Virginia, DC, New York, none of them, and now Florida and Michigan in between that, nobody celebrated Juneteenth. It was actually a little off for me because it was very, very weird. And then when it finally got recognized, right, I was happy. But for the people who began to ask questions, well, what is Juneteenth? I was like, well, wait, like, how is Juneteenth? But this also then drove me down the path of recognizing the miseducation as it relates to the history of the country, the real history in the United States, which we as a country often don't want to really look at holistically. And for me, it's a struggle. So to be transparent again, I've got 7 kids, right? I've got five kids from my ex-wife. I've got 2 stepchildren. And so for me, education is a real thing. It's very important to properly educate our youth. And history is a component of education. Yes, we want to teach them science. We want to teach them math. We want to teach them the problem solve. But they also need to understand the true origins of this country, so that they can be informed as they go out into the world, whether they are black or white, on what happened to get us to where we are. If we don't understand the past and know the past, we're doomed to repeat it, right? And so it's always pained me. I've taken special effort to try and always have these conversations in my household to ensure that my kids are aware. And the sad part is I don't even know everything, right? I don't know all of the history of everything that goes on. I know certain things that I know. I then know things that are passed down to me based on the experiences of my mother, my grandmother, my grandfathers on both sides, and those types of things. But it's the whole component of Juneteenth is just it's very disheartening that it's only been 5 years that we've really celebrated that, because July 4th has been forever.
Right. Jamika, should I go into my segue, or did you want to respond to that?
No, go. Let's segue. Let's segue.
Okay. Well, my story on this was, again, I make sweeping assumptions. Right. My sweeping assumptions is we've got a fairly intelligent cultural aspect to what we do. And if, for example, an organization has announced that one of the senior leaders is kicking off a Juneteenth webinar or call for a very large team, that's mad props.
Okay.
Said leader may or may not have admitted on the call, I actually didn't know what Juneteenth was until just this morning.
But that's okay.
He's
So
the one,
let's
wait. No. He's the one who sponsored it. He's the one who created the initiative.
yeah, but that's okay. So let's be clear here. So I don't blame individuals for not knowing and being aware of Juneteenth, right? Because it's not individuals' responsibility to go out and search that. It's the curriculum that we study in school that should bring up these very, very strong, powerful, and momentous dates in history. So for an individual to not know it, and for them to then sponsor it, right? I actually commend them that they were willing to sponsor it and put their name behind it, even though they didn't know it, because that tells me somebody came to them, explained to them what it was, and they said, well, yes, I will sponsor that. Yes, I will help put that on, and yes, I will support that. That shows the thing that we need more than ever, which is an ally.
Well,
I'll give you that.
Well, I
But
kind of agree. I kind of agree with you, Larry. I do agree that our education system, even more so moving forward, because we have a banned book list that's just full of lists of books about Black people. So I do agree that our curriculum is not accurate in its portrayal of slavery, of Black history, of American history in general. So I do agree, but I also think that we're executives, and it is up to us to, as leaders, we have to be wise in ways that others are not. And so while I'm like, hey, be honest about what you don't know, that's fair. But don't wait until the morning of to figure out what Juneteenth is. Like, that's ignorant. And I think that I would not have admitted that. I'm going to be honest with you. I would never, even if I did just find out this morning, I never would have told a team that, because I would think about how the members of that community reflected upon that executive. And it's not just regards to Juneteenth, it's any cultural celebration. I've been to and supported many and sponsored many cultural celebrations where I had to get an education before I stepped foot in them, because I think it's important to honor the traditions of others, and be respectful. And I think that knowledge is the way in which you do that. If you just found out this morning, there's a really big chance that you're going to become the person who ends up on a newsreel for saying something stupid. And so I think that, it is important to educate ourselves, because we are the leaders of the free world. And we have to be educated. So this idea, and this is something that's pervasive in America, this idea that, oh, well, I didn't know. Well, that's why we are where we are today, because you didn't know and you didn't use Google to figure it out, or even better yet, ChatGPT, which is sometimes wrong, but you didn't use any medium to try to figure it out. Like, figure it the fuck out, y'all. Like,
yes!
This isn't a game that we're playing here. These are people's lives, and us not knowing is a part of the problem. We cannot position ourselves as leaders, we lead billion-dollar organizations. To say I didn't know about my own history, and not a small thing, right? I didn't know the 1909 thing, right? Not a small thing. We don't know big things, and that's a problem.
So, okay, so let me ask this question. Was this leader a person of color that sponsored it, and they didn't know, and they chose? So this is part of my point, right? So So when you're someone who is not part of a genre or ethnicity, there is oftentimes not a driver for you to dive deep. You may know some surface level things, right? But you may not know very deep components. I'll give you a perfect example. My ex mother in law, Black female executive in New York, didn't know what Juneteenth was. She had no clue. She had no clue what Juneteenth was, right? When I met her 20 years ago, she had zero clue what Juneteenth was, had never heard of it before. Grew up, born and raised in Harlem, right? The mecca of ethnicity in Harlem, had zero clue what Juneteenth was. I didn't hold her accountable to that. I basically, because where she was, it wasn't a thing that impacted them. It wasn't a date that was recognized in the societal component of where she was brought up. And so when I think about our non-minority counterparts and allies, I think we have an opportunity to educate them, right? So that they then can't say they don't know, right? But I actually would applaud someone for saying, you know what, I didn't know this. But then my expectation is once they know that they're actually going to dig into that education and not just know that Juneteenth is now a thing, but understand why Juneteenth is a thing and be able to actually articulate that.
I'm stuck in between both of you right now.
It makes it a powerful provocation of an argument, right? Because it's like I think we both can be right here. I think I think that I'm from one of the families who there's a news story about my family. My family's from Texas also, and we are one of the families who we were one of the last families that was freed. And so there's a news story about my family being freed by the Union Army and then going on to celebrate what was one of the first Juneteenth. So even though I grew up in California, I know what Juneteenth is. But Larry, I'll take it further than that. I think that it's not just that, and I grew up in California. So let's start with that. We celebrate a lot of cultural holidays here. I grew up in the Bay Area. We grew up celebrating a lot of cultural holidays. So when I moved to places where they didn't have those, I was like, where is Lunar New Year? What is wrong with y'all? Where is Diwali? I grew up thinking that like that was our thing too, right? And that's the thing though. The fact that I grew up believing that it was my thing too changes how I respond to other people and their events. We essentially, Black people in America, we are saying this thing that you made our thing is your thing too, right? Black history is your thing too. And I think that this is where we run into problems, or we have all these divergent opinions, because if I can celebrate another cultural holiday and feel like it's my thing too, then why is being a Black American why are we othered so often? Why is there a Black History Month when it simply is American history? We are such a unique group in that Black Americans have a journey that has never been replicated anywhere in the history of the world. And it's such a unique journey that it needs to be documented and it needs to be told truthfully so that it is not repeated in this way. When we think about some of the other historical things that have happened, like apartheid in South Africa, it was modeled after Jim Crow in America. That should tell you something about the evils that lie in wait from not educating people. And so when we think about our history in the context of other people's history in America, we're not just asking it to be celebrated because we're Black people. We're asking for ourselves to be celebrated and educated because we are a part of the fabric that is woven into this country's threads, right? And so that is why this is such an important topic, and not just for Black people, not just Black history, but American history is a rich tapestry, and we have to make sure that we tell this history accurately.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I'm going to add something to what you said. I want to tell you a component of what you said. So where you talked about you grew up in California and you had Lunar New Year and all these things, right? I grew up in Texas. In Texas, I had never heard of Yom Kippur. I had never heard of Lunar New Year. I'd never heard of Hanukkah. There are so many. When I moved to New York, when I met my ex-wife in college, and we ended up, going to New York and going up there during holiday time, I had never seen a Jewish person. I didn't know what that was, right? And that's why for me, when I look at these things from my lens, I understand not knowing. Right? When I first found out about Jewish holidays and the religion of Judaism and Jewish people, right? The first ones I saw were Hasidic Jews in New York. I was like, what's to do with the curly stuff? Right? I called them curly Qs the first time I saw them.
It's a payas.
Right? Right? But again, there was a lack of knowledge for me. But then I did the deep knowledge learning to try and figure out what it was, so I was more educated. And so I recognize for our non-minority counterparts, right, based on where you grew up, based on how you grew up, based on your suburb, based on your city, based on your state, it's like there is an opportunity where they had never seen or heard of any of the things that have affected and impacted us. So when we talk about the hood, when we talk about urban, living in an urban area, when we talk about gangs, when we talk about schools not having textbooks or you're sharing a text, these are things that are outside the consciousness of what they thought was possible. Because for them, they're like, well, we grew up kind of poor too, but, we made it work. Well, no, your kind of poor is different than my kind of poor, right? Right. Yeah. And so there's this thing where I'm always trying to understand the lens of other people so that I can then share my lens and hopefully educate them, and hopefully that they want to educate themselves. Because I'll give you, listen, so I'm going to share this. So I'm in a text group and in a text group with a group of people that are vastly, vastly different from me. And it is super interesting, and I like it because I am at the core of me, I am always trying to understand other people. And so we have a lot of dialogue in this group where they think differently than I do, and I challenge them and they challenge me, and we go back and forth, and we tend to find areas where we sort of agree with each other on certain aspects of certain things. But I'm always trying to recognize that my lens is unique for me, and I have a duty and responsibility to try and educate other people, but I also have a duty and responsibility to try and understand others, which is why my wife and I work, because our first go-to is always seek to understand.
Woo! Those are the only two questions that I had, to be honest with you, and the only two topics, because I knew that y'all would show up. So thank you for that. Now, what I will say is the one thing that you tapped on that was a disconnect from your earlier comment is you took the effort to understand that they have payasses and that, right? You didn't have to. It wasn't a leadership thing. It was a human thing.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I mean by this. Hey, this has been promoted for 2 weeks. That the head of this group is going to be, supporting a whole presentation. They're bringing outside people, and the morning of, that's what drew me nuts.
Okay,
right? It wasn't that he just found out that morning he was sponsoring it. This was promoted as the SVP, EVP, whatever was was sponsoring. I'm like, all right, if you're going to sponsor an affinity group, show the hell up.
Right.
Do a little research, right? So that was what killed me.
That means it wasn't important.
Jamaica, thank you.
Yeah, that
wasn't important. It was just another meeting on the calendar.
This is what thank you. This is what pained me, because it was yet another critical moment in a company's exposure to learning. And that's why I had this, that's why I wanted to have this conversation in the way that I did. Because I guarantee you, everybody who's on LinkedIn or YouTube, because we're streaming to both, they don't have exposure to this, right? Well, they don't ask the questions, or they may not have people in their network or in their circles that they can ask this and feel comfortable.
I think, for us as leaders, we are in such a curious time right now. And I think we have to set some examples, especially when people's humanity is on the line. We have to set some examples, and we have to take some stances around people's right to be. And I think that there are things that we're going to have to do. And Mel, you said something earlier. You said, I don't want to make this political. And I'm like, yeah, I do. because I think that we've done this thing where if we bring up politics, then everybody kind of does this little two-step out of the conversation because they don't want to have hard conversations. But politics is about people. And so when we say we don't want to be political, I am, now saying the opposite of that. Like, yes, I want to be political because I want people to know that I actually give a damn. And I actually care about them. I care about their existence. I care about their humanity enough to put myself out there, to be open to being criticized, to being open to potentially being ostracized. I'm putting myself out there because I'm a leader and because my voice matters. And I think that we all do a great job at that. So a lot of what you see me doing right now is letting people know, like, I am exhibiting this curiosity. I've had some really interesting conversations on LinkedIn around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because they are important conversations to be had. I've done my Black History Month series because nobody is going to be able to tell me that there's no Black History Month, because you don't get to take something from me that you didn't give to me in the first place. And so I think that, the conversation that we're having here is it's important, not necessarily because of the topics we're diving into, but because we're showing the world that we have a perspective. And I think that matters. Our voices matter. And what cannot happen right now is that people cannot be silenced. We have to say what we believe and what we think is true. So Larry, I commend you, because I think that, standing up for what you believe in right now as a leader is the most important thing. I
100%.
think, right? It's the most important thing. It sparks such rich conversations, and out of those conversations comes understanding.
Yeah. And so it's interesting you say this, right? So number one, I always stand on faith and principles. In everything I do, I stand on faith and principles. But with that, during this recent Cruise Con, right, the topic that I was
y'all were like Cruise Con without me, but I'll come back to that later on. It's fine though. It's fine. It's fine. I finally got an invitation. It's
fine. Well, we missed you. But on my topic was building a diverse team that's not lip service. And I started my presentation by defining DEI. Like, let's get this out there, because I wanted to say what DEI was not and what DEI was. And there was someone in the audience who spoke up about merit. And we got into, and the reason I loved it was because we got into this conversation about how merit plays into the aspect of DEI. Yeah. And I asked the question of, do you believe that merit is not a part of DEI? Right? Because the reality is that's the misnomer out there today.
That's the huge misnomer.
Right? So, DEI means they're just handing a job. Oh, you got a job. I gave it to this remote because this remote is, of color. No, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Right. That remote doesn't work for this TV. And so as I broke it down, we were actually able to have a very open and transparent conversation about and that's why I'm glad that you said diversity, equity, and inclusion, because saying DEI skips over each word that matters in that thing.
Yeah.
It just does. And that's why most people won't say the words. They'll just say DEI.
Yeah.
They won't say the words holistically, because when you define each word and its purpose, right? Like, they have individual components of purpose as it relates to the topic of DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they matter. They matter a lot, because the reality is, at the end of the day, statistics don't lie. They don't lie. And there are tons of statistics that say the most diverse teams are successful and the most diverse organizations are the most profitable. I mean, unless we want to now say statistics and numbers are fake news, I don't know where we're at.
Well, if we look at the companies that have decided to publicly express their continued support for diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think we look at their boards, we look at their leadership teams, and we look at this ethos that is not just lip service, but that they actually live by. You'll see some things in common that those companies have. Their margins are up, their profitability is up, but also I think that they are just sitting on the right side of history. And when we think about what diversity, equity, inclusion have brought to the table, I mean, there have been companies that said, hey, I didn't know about historically Black colleges and universities, and now they are first on my list for recruiting. You didn't know about Black colleges and universities. We did. And so, and this excellence that comes from out of those historic universities is hundreds of years old, right? We've had our own schools for a very long time. But, 5 years ago, a recruiter didn't know about HBCUs. So what DEI has done is allow access. And I'll tell you, I think people feel like Black people don't have spaces that we like to be in without everybody else. That is incorrect. We like each other and we like to be in spaces together. We like to have our own safe spaces. And so this idea that we'll just give you access to them is actually untrue. And so when you get access to an HBCU and all the special talented people that go to those schools, you are getting access to a special brand of magic from Black people that may not have been accessible to you. And so you're not doing the HBCU a favor. They're doing you a favor, because there have been talented people there for hundreds of years. And so I think that is where also we have to turn this conversation on its side a little bit and say, listen, this demographic of people have always been this way. They've always been excellent. They've always been gifted. They've always, had a special place and a special light. You didn't know that though. And now you do. And so, when you go and look for this talent that has been missing, and it's something that comes up in cybersecurity all the time, we say, oh, we have a talent gap. We don't have a talent gap.
We have a sourcing problem.
We have a sourcing problem, and we have a vision gap. We have a vision gap. Because the talent is out there. You don't know where to go for it.
HBCU graduate right here. Houston-Tillotson University, shout out. HT Rams, literally oldest institution of higher learning in the state of Texas.
And I have two nephews at Hampton University, one in aviation engineering, one in cybersecurity, getting a stellar education at a historically Black university. And I think that it was never a doubt for me when we started to look for colleges for my nephews that they would be at a Black college, not just because of the education that they receive, but because of the community that we wanted them to be a part of as Black men. It is important that they be protected. It is important that their self-esteem is protected and they are built up to be productive humans in this society. And one of the things we felt is that right now it's a little dangerous for them to be out in the world. They are still children, right? They're out there, but they're still babies. And, the world isn't going to be kind to them. And we said, well, if we can give them a few more years, then we're going to give them a few more years. And that's how they ended up in Hampton, because we really wanted them to have the same solace that everyone else has going through college. And I think that, again, that's a whole nother topic about how our kids are treated and how our young adults are treated, and this acceleration of them into adulthood because they are Black. It's unfair, and it's going to cause a larger, more systemic problem as they get older. And so, I think that when we talk about all these different areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's like, no, we gave you all access. And with that access, you have built incredible communities within the workspace that have flourished and thrived and contributed to the bottom lines and the top lines of businesses.
So I want to thank you for opening up the floodgates, because we didn't prep for this call at all. I didn't want to impose politics, but I'm glad you showed up. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I know people who were personally, emotionally, and physically impacted by recent decisions in funding and everything else. Larry, I'm gonna circle this around with some of the efforts that you were a founder of, that you supported, right? You've got Cyversity, I've got ISSA Cyber, right? These programs are getting impacted, right? These programs that are supposed to help are getting impacted. Why? Because it's now workforce development. It's not diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's funding is being pulled back. So this is the most critical time for us to step up like this. So that's why, to me, I was like, let's go. right? I don't have a political stance. I have an emotional stance on the impact because my motto is educate and elevate. And right now, again, I was on a call last night. It was an emotional call because their income, their livelihood was directly impacted by these decisions, right? So for us to show up and show out like this on this, let me just tell you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Closing words, Larry.
So for me, anybody and everybody who sees this or listens to this, recognize that you play a role at the end of the day. So there are a lot of times when I'm speaking to people, whether it's on a call, on a Zoom, or on a stage, people don't recognize that they have a role. They think, oh, yes, my company. Oh, yes, like somebody's going to do this. Diversity is going to take care of this. WESIS, races, right? So, no. Everybody individually has a role that they play. And you have a choice every day what part of that role, right? What part of that you want to participate in. So look at yourself in the mirror, think about the network, think about the connections, think about the organization that you're a part of and the organizations you should be a part of, and recognize you play a role. I say this a lot, and there has been no movement in the history of the world that just the impacted people have stood up and gotten change to happen. So in this instance, right, you can be on the right side or the wrong side of history. But at the end of the day, there are going to be people that are going to be standing up together, that some of it's going to be the people that are being directly impacted, and some of it's going to be those who are not. Choose which side of this you want to be on for history, and let's make the movement happen.
Woo! All right, Miss Jamika, tag, you're it.
I double down on what Larry said. We are at a pivot point in the future of America. And you want to be on the right side of history. And what has made this country so phenomenal is the opportunity that it offers people who come here and who live here to make the world a better place, to make it a better place for their families, for their children. That is an opportunity that still exists. And it is so important that we protect that opportunity. And what we are doing right now, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because when I think about it, when I think about all that's happening in the world, and around myself and my husband, we talk about it. We say, directly, it doesn't impact us. But does that stop us from getting out here and fighting and windmilling until we're tired? No, it does not. Because it's bigger than just the two of us. It's about the future that we hope to build for all the people that we love, for all the people that you all love, and for the world around us. For the world that we hope to see, we have to continue to fight. And so I hope that, to Larry's point, that we drive this point home, that you have to engage. You have to get involved. You have to educate yourself, and you have to understand that the things that you're doing may not only impact you, they may impact the person next to you and impact the generations 100 years down the line. We may not live to see the results of the work that we're doing right now, but it doesn't make that work any less important. And so I implore you to get involved, to get engaged, to continue to fight, to continue to resist, because the work that we are all doing is important to humanity, and it's important to the world around us.
I'm going to need a nap after this, but I got calls and I got shit to do after this. I cannot thank you enough for both of you, not only giving me whiplash on agreeing to kick this off, right? This is the inaugural piece to what we have been planning. And you spoke about this, Larry. Which side of history do you want to be on? This is the side of history I want to be on. Starting a new chapter, clean slate, starting with two of the most incredible leaders that are going to continue to do incredible things. I can't thank you two enough for what you do, what you've done, what you do, and what you're going to continue to do. And for me, this is a blessing to be here. I can't thank you enough. And I will close this out by saying, you rock. And Jamika, We'll talk. I'll try to get off my ledge, with the issues that I have. Larry, we got a lot of follow up. And by the way, in case you saw me, yes, I'm trying to get Monster to sponsor us. So this is the
Oh boy.
umpteenth
Oh boy.
stream. So Monster, please sponsor us, because that's the only way that I stay awake most of these calls. Thank you again. Stay blessed. We're going to sign out for now.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate you.